Hello, this video will explain how to connect your iOS device to your DM32 with the built-in Wi-Fi hotspot. Make sure your DM32 gauge is enabled with Wi-Fi. If it is not, you may purchase the Wi-Fi upgrade that is needed to use with this type of connection. We will start by configuring our DM32 gauge. Turn on the gauge. You will know that your gauge is Wi-Fi enabled if the startup screen contains the red text Wi-Fi written above the logo. We will need to access the network settings of the gauge. Press the settings button in the lower right of the screen. Go to the next page by pressing the button in the lower right of the screen. Find the network settings button at the top of the screen. From here, we can control the status of the DM32 network connection. Press the status option until the text reads Wi-Fi Create. Wait until the Wi-Fi Create network is enabled and the network name has updated as well. The network name should contain your gauge's serial number by default. Take note of the network name. We will need it for later. Now let's move on to the iOS device. We need to connect the gauge to the iOS device in order to run tests in rCloud. Open up the Settings app on your device. Select Wi-Fi settings in the column on the left. The list will populate and your DM32 gauge should appear in the list by following the previous steps. The gauge's default network name contains the serial number within the name, making it easy to select which gauge to connect to in a scenario where there are multiple gauges in range. Select your gauge from the list. Wait for it to connect. The blue checkmark verifies that the iOS device is now connected to the gauge. This setup is great if there are no Wi-Fi networks around to connect the gauge and the iOS device to. This connection runs offline, so when you complete a test, the app will save the test offline and upload it later to rCloud once your iOS device regains connection to the internet. If your iOS device has cellular data capabilities, known as LTE, and is currently with a data plan, it is possible to connect to the DM32 gauge and still have access to the internet through a cellular data plan. This connectivity will allow you to upload your rCloud test right after it completes. First, open up the Settings app on your iOS device. We should be connected to the gauge as it shows the gauge's network name by the Wi-Fi settings menu. We will need the cellular data submenu, so press on that. Make sure that the cellular data switch is switched to on at the top of the screen. If it's not, switch it on. Wait a few seconds until the LTE symbol appears on the top status bar. If it doesn't, then proceed with the following steps. Head over to the Wi-Fi settings. Your gauge should be the currently connected Wi-Fi network. If it is not, make sure your gauge is on and its network status is set to Wi-Fi Create. Press the blue information button to the right of the DM32 network name. Select the static option in the selection. Select the IP address and enter 192.168.0.2. Select the subnet mask and enter 255.255.255.0. Make sure router is blank. Select the DNS and enter 192.168.1.1. Make sure search domain is blank. Now press the Wi-Fi back button. Wait a few seconds for the network to refresh, and the LTE symbol should appear in the status bar above. Your iOS device is now connected to the internet through LTE and is also connected to your DM32 gauge. You will only need to do this procedure once, because these changes made to the DM32 network will be saved. You have successfully connected your iOS device to the DM32 gauge. If your iOS device has cellular data capabilities, known as LTE, then you can perform rCloud tests and upload them directly to rCloud. Otherwise, you can still run rCloud tests offline and upload those tests as soon as you reconnect your iOS device to the internet.